Hi, this is Jim,
And Ralph.
and we welcome you to Psychology Takeaway, where we look at current concepts in the area of psychology and try to make sense out of them. And today it's Psychology Takeaway on the road.
Yes, we're down at the center of Mount Pleasant in a shop called Unplugged.
Unplugged? Yeah. And we've got the owner of Unplugged with us. Now, you might hear some ambient sounds because, we're not in our luxurious soundproof studio. You might hear traffic going by. You might hear some background music. Hey, this is the real world, baby. Our guest today is Dylan. And Dylan, would you pronounce your last name for us?
Banagis. Yeah.
Banagis. Okay. Now, Ralph and I came in here a couple of weeks ago just to see the place, and we were struck by what the ambient feeling of the place was. It reminded me, at least, of maybe a basement room, a family basement room in the 1950s, where people had their stuff and pool tables and things like that. And the whole ambience is really, really relaxing. And the name is sort of interesting, too, Unplugged. How did you come up with this?
Yeah. So our whole mission at Life Unplugged is to encourage people to use technology a little bit less and be present, focus on being present with one another. So what we do is we sell a lot of outdoor apparel themed designs and t-shirts and sweatshirts and all that type of stuff. And it really gets people thinking about their technology use, but also starts conversation with others. So we wanted to create a space where people could come and not work or not work on their laptops and come and hang out and have a meeting place for people and place where people can come and count on not seeing technology all the time because we're always seeing it everywhere we go.
Oh, yeah.
So in the space, we have a pool table, we have foosball, we have a bunch of table games and board games, and then we have kind of like little reading nooks and meeting areas. And on top of that, we also have our retail section where we can show people the clothing that we sell.
Yeah. How did this start? How did you come up with this idea? Is this a national thing that you're franchising, or?
It's not franchising, but it is national. We ship all across the country, including Alaska and Hawaii.
Okay.
So I started this with a professor of mine from college at CMU. So Fire Up Chips. We had this idea to try to encourage people to be present with one another, and we didn't really know a whole lot, but we knew that we could start designing some t-shirts and see if people like the idea. And we really just I think we started with 4 or 5 designs that were really simple. We still sell them today because they sell well. But we printed some t-shirts and started selling online a little bit, and found that going to farmers markets and talking to people in person actually did way better, which is
what a concept, right?
With what we do.
Yeah.
But also with the concept of, we need to get this to the masses too. So we need to be able to sell online and figure out how to do that. So, But what's cool is we started kind of grassroots, and we started going to shows and expos every single weekend. We grew big enough we bought a bus, and then that bus became a mobile shop. So we grew out of the minivan that my business partner had and needed more space. So packed up a bus and went to shows and expos, and then COVID hit, and obviously there weren't any shows and expos anymore. So we sold the bus to someone who wanted to convert it into a camper, and we learned how to sell better online, and that's when things kind of took off for us.
Now, you're here in the middle of Mount Pleasant in what used to be a bank. It's a nice looking space here that you've got. Ralph and I are old, and so we've come up from, knowing about nature and being out in nature for long periods of time, because we didn't have stuff like cell phones. In fact, we communicated with what, Ralph? 2 tin cans and a string, right?
That was the start.
Yeah. So we didn't really have to get weaned away from our devices, although sometimes I think we have to take, cut Ralph's thumbs off. So as a child of the 21st century, Dylan, what was a lot of people would have gone into a business focused on making money. What made you think, first of all, about connecting people to one another?
Mainly it was, I'm involved in youth ministry, and I went to, when I was a leader at camp, I noticed these kids who were, I was on the edge of, when I grew up, I was on the edge of cell phones. So I was 15 when I got my first cell phone. It was a flip phone that there's no internet on it or anything. It was just texting. And it was a privilege to have one, where obviously now it's different. But so the point of that being, I grew up still riding my bike to my friend's house. The activities that we did were creating games and fun things that were just pure curiosity and creativity. And what I noticed being in youth ministry was all that stuff kind of fading away.
Kind of going away, yeah.
And a lot of people being on their phones, obviously. So when we took kids to camp, we took their phones away because that's kind of the protocol at camp. And you started seeing all these personalities come out. Mm-hmm. So what we did, what sparked my interest in this business idea was to try to encourage that more and try to bring that out of people.
Okay. We've told this story before. I was a camp counselor also. But Ralph did something pretty interesting a number of years ago with kids from Southern Ontario, right, Ralph?
Yeah, they were mostly from the Toronto area, which is Canada's, certainly Ontario's biggest city. And these kids came up from the inner city of Toronto. Now, this is back in the day of MP3 players, and very few kids had cell phones, but just about everybody at least had a cassette player, a Walkman, that sort of thing. And we did the same thing. We took them on a canoe trip into the wilderness of northern Ontario and took away all their electronics. Mm-hmm. And the first 2 days, they were worried about being eaten by a bear, being gotten by a snake, and what were they going to do with their lives without their music? And by the end of the trip, they were saying, it's kind of nice just having the quiet.
Yeah.
And so we felt that we had maybe accomplished something just in terms of helping this group learn that being detached from 24-hour of music, or at least 12 hours as long as you were awake, was a good thing. Now, today's world, of course, you not only have music, but you have TikTok, you have all the other electronic things that you can suckle on and say, I never have to go into my own head and think.
Yeah, but so you unplugged these kids, so they had a couple of weeks of Life Unplugged. Well, Sheila, my wife, and I saw the same thing. We were up at Michigan Tech. We saw these kids from Detroit who were kind of weaned away from their devices, and all of a sudden were stuck out in nature. And then what do you do when you're in nature? Dylan?
Anything you want.
That's it. Yeah. Now, as a retailer here in Mount Pleasant, do people come in here with their devices and get confused?
Surprisingly, no. Mm-hmm. We haven't had a lot of people come in and ask for Wi-Fi. We put it on the front door, so it says no Wi-Fi here on our front door. Mm-hmm. So we make it pretty clear. But we've had a lot of good response from people saying like how different it is, and how obviously if they want to come work, they just go to the coffee shops downtown, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But this is a place where they can count on getting away from all that. So to answer your question, no, we've had a lot of people just come in, and there's that bowling game over there on the table, and that's been like the hot commodity around here.
Yeah, that's my grandson and I were here last Friday. He really liked that one.
So we're trying to find more table games like that so people can, focus on that stuff and the fun that comes from these games rather than the fun that kind of people just hide in their devices when there's not some stuff to do.
Right.
We've noticed. So we try to fill this place with a bunch of stuff to do. So
Dylan, do you get a lot of young people coming in?
I think right now that might be hard with the college students being gone. But what's been really encouraging is we've had a lot of kids come ride their bikes in the summer and park them out right in front of the windows. And they come in here and have cookies and play pool and ping pong for a couple hours. So that, I mean, when seeing that is like when it's all worth it is when we get to see the young generation coming up and not pulling their phones out, and they're having a lot of fun in here. Eating candy, getting pop, and
playing pool.
Playing
Yeah.
pool, yeah.
kind of like what I did when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, I brought Elijah here and showed him how to play pool. I won, but that was okay because we had played chess earlier, and he beat me 4-0. Okay, now, what do you think the effects long term might be with the staying plugged in? Ralph, you've done some work on this.
Well, staying plugged in tends to disconnect you from whatever your reality is. And unfortunately, it has, I think, long-term effects on your mind.
Yeah, we've got a couple of videos that we have in the Learn More section that kind of will underscore that.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that's the classic scene, and I'm sure, Dylan, this is one of the things that you want to get people away from, but there's a photograph and some videos of people who come into a restaurant, 4 people, they sit at a 4-top, they sit down, everybody takes out their phone and nobody talks.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there, all 4 of them, looking at different stuff on their phone. And I think that to help the world, and certainly to help the U.S., we need more conversations, not less. Even people who are disconnected, if you will, politically or socially in their approach to life, I think need to talk to each other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's something that my wife and I, when we go out to eat for a date night, you can always count on us, like, solidifying the fact that we're doing the right thing, because we see that, and we see, we have 2 little girls, and we don't want to raise them in a way that they're addicted to their screen. So, and it's really hard nowadays because there's so many options. And it's easy to give your kid a screen and take a break, whereas you didn't have that luxury when I'm sure you were raising kids or all those types of things. So, they even have the screens that you pay on now, and they have games that you can buy
Right at the table, right?
Yeah. So what we do as a family is we literally put that in the seat next to us and hide it from our family and from each other, because it's distracting even when you're not on it, because it's all these lights flashing and stuff. I'm just trying to be present with my wife and my kids. And there's another way to get you addicted to a screen.
Yeah. I think in the nature of true confessions, both of my daughters, my 2 older daughters, were early risers. I mean, 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, and I would be daddy, and I would get up and with them. And what do you do at 5:30 in the morning? Well, I turned on PBS, Channel 14 here in town, and we watched Sesame Street. But that was it. That was the extent, I think, of the programming. But now, and Ralph and I have talked about this before, TikTok is such a omnipresent and addictive kind of platform that you could be there for 24 hours in a row, right, Ralph?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you can get sucked down so many rabbit holes, and you go from this to this to this, and the next thing you know, you're saying, 3 hours have gone by and I'm still looking at my phone. The thing that strikes me is if you think of TikTok, the original TikTok in China has what we, for lack of a better word now, call good stuff. It has programming about math and science and things that people should be thinking about and learning with a particular Chinese emphasis. But when we look at TikTok in North America, it's, again, for lack of a more polite term, full of crap. And it's designed deliberately to seduce people away from good thinking.
Well, I remember when I introduced you to TikTok, Ralph. You put it on your phone, and for about a week and a half, you were gone. You had to finally take it off, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, I took it off because I found it too distracting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was not part of the original Facebook generation. I didn't get into that when it first came out the way a lot of people did, but I know my daughter is, as far as I'm concerned, spends way too much time on Facebook. That seems to be her distractor.
Uh-huh. Okay, Dylan, we're here now. You started a while ago with shirts and this idea of peacefulness and calm in the midst of the storm. What's the big picture? Where are you going with Unplugged, Life Unplugged?
I think big picture, we want to grow our clothing brand. So the idea that you can start a conversation with someone over what you're wearing, and that's, if you look at a lot of our reviews online, it's really cool to see that people are like, yeah, the quality is great, I love the design, but I get comments on it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really our goal, is to start that conversation. So obviously, if we can have that everywhere in the country, the more conversations we can start, the bigger impact we can have. And then two, a couple of years ago, we started taking people on trips, so helping them.
And what kind of trips?
First of all, we started with couples retreats, but then we moved into kind of just retreat-based trips. We took people to West Virginia. We went whitewater rafting and hiking, and
I bet you wish you had the bus back, right?
well, yeah. But they actually met us down there because
Okay.
there's so many different groups of people. But the goal would be to give people these firsthand experiences of being unplugged, and taking them, giving them experience to take home and remember for a long time coming. So they can think about those times where they were unplugged in West Virginia or, northern Michigan or things like that. And then third is we actually donate 11% of our net profits to children who are born with congenital heart defects.
Okay.
So, CHDs are the most, like, they take the lives of more infants than anything across the board.
Okay, so you want to have better quality and more of your product out there, and bring people into experiences, and at the same time, you're funding, giving funding for kids who have
Congenital heart defects.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good to me. Now, are you going to go beyond that?
In terms of what?
I don't know. Maybe putting Wi-Fi here in the building.
You can count on that not happening. I mean, I obviously need it for my work, but we're not going to offer that to our customers.
Yeah. Okay. I'm fascinated by the idea of the trips. Ralph talked about taking kids into, was it Algonquin Park, Ralph?
No, it was further north. It was Lake Superior Park.
Okay. There probably were bears and snakes there, Ralph.
Oh, yeah.
And you taking people down into West Virginia, and me seeing the folks up at Houghton. This kind of wilderness camping, wilderness experience, it seems to be catching on. People maybe are getting away from the big cruise ships, and they're taking small ships to get into places like the Amazon or Antarctica, Alaska.
They
Yeah.
want to get away from everything. They're
Yeah.
sick and tired of the hustle and bustle.
Yeah. Okay, so sick and tired of the hustle and bustle. That could be something on a shirt.
Maybe.
Maybe Life Unplugged in the front and sick and tired of the hustle and bustle in the back.
Yeah.
Okay,
Keep
well, if you
unplugged and carry on.
yeah, if you use that, Psych Takeaway is going to want to have part of the 11%. Okay, all right. Yeah, you're doing something that we have not yet figured out how to do, and that is to make money. So, in the spirit of that, let us just mention one more time that we do have CE courses that are available, and we're going to be putting out a special appeal probably at the end of the next podcast. We're going to do one on human trafficking. So we're going to give you an opportunity at the end of that one to take on our human trafficking course. And but for right now, hey, Dylan, thank you very much for the coffee.
Of course.
Yeah.
Hope you guys liked it.
It's excellent coffee. And you sell that too, don't you?
We do.
Here, yeah. And so, we're going to mention to our listeners that it's still not too late for you to buy the boys a coffee. So until next time, this is Jim
And Ralph.
saying, keep your stick on the ice because we're all in this together.